Hello, everyone. Welcome to Small Biz Tips. So I got this email interview from a introduction from a good friend of mine, and I jumped on the Zoom with this gentleman, and I was blown away. He was just giving me gems after gems after gems, and I told him, I'm like, bro, I gotta have you in the podcast, and he agrees. So Joel, what's going on, man?
Hi, thanks for having me, Gilbert.
Thank you for coming. Appreciate you. So before we jump on all the goodies you're gonna share with us today, who is
Sure.
Joe?
I'm sorry, what?
Who is Joe?
Oh, hey, I'm Joel McGuire. I'm out of Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm a recovering attorney. I was a contract lawyer for a little over 20 years, and I was a military veteran. Before that, I was an officer in the Army. And
Wow.
um, a legal client asked me to help him with the sale of his business, and that led me down the rabbit hole to becoming an expert in mergers and acquisitions, as well as integrating acquired businesses and getting them groomed for a profitable, highly valuable exit. So that's kind of the skill set I've been bringing to my professional clients for the last quite a few years. So
Wow. So before we go any further, thank you for your service in the military.
thank
T-
you. I love it. So
Tell us about that. I think you were a ranger.
yeah, I was an Army Ranger. I had an RTC scholarship to college, and then after college, I became an officer. I was lieutenant, a first and second lieutenant in the Army, and I was Ranger class 0894, and I served in Germany, the Balkans, and the Middle East.
Wow.
And then after that service ended, a number of my attorneys, a number of my soldiers told me that because I was constantly going to bat for them on different things that would happen to
Yeah.
them in the course of their lives. And one of them said, "You ought to be an attorney." And it's the first I ever thought of it was when one of my soldiers brought that up. So then I went to Northwestern Law School in Chicago, and I graduated, and I spent, a little over 20 years doing contract law and
Wow.
contract litigation. And I had a litigation client come to me years after I represented him and said, somebody just came along and offered me some money for my business. I don't know what to do. So I really just deep dove just to help Kevin out. And in the course of that, I just fell in love with it after 20 years of litigation where everybody was at each other's throats, in
Mm,
this transaction. Everybody's trying to get the best, outcome for themselves, but everybody's way more worried about getting the transaction done. And I
yeah.
found just so refreshing. And that's been the world I've been living in ever since, is coming across people like you and just trying to part of the joy of doing this is just listening to situations and then trying
Yeah.
to add some value to that. I get a lot of personal satisfaction out of being able to do so.
I noticed a pattern. Someone you're helping people, right, in the military. Somebody said you should be an attorney and you go and get it done. And you're helping a client, and then I need help with my business, and you go and get it done. So I'm seeing a pattern from you going from one industry to another. I'm curious, what has been that mindset that you had and the skill set that you used when you were in the military to becoming an attorney to now being the M&A space? What is that thing that that's been transitional throughout that time period for you?
Well, one common denominator is determining and following systems to the letter. I'm kind of
Mm,
like Forrest Gump when it comes to following a system. I'm to the letter. And that's what I really like. Really, the M&A space, finding, negotiating,
yeah.
closing, integrating, growing, and exit grooming a business for sale. That's a systematic kind of approach. 90% of any from source to exit situation is going to be the same. And that's how combat planning was. Combat,
Okay.
whether it was a reconnaissance or a raid or an ambush, it follows the same set of warning order through operational order through movement to the preliminary position to the reconnaissance, then back to refine
Wow.
plan, and then you execute, and then it reminds me
The
of that.
structure.
Yeah, the
I
structure is the same.
got you.
Turns out I've got a good mind for finding and following, a structured plan, and it works out really well in the M&A space. And being a strategic advisor, I not just do M&A on buy and sell
Yeah.
side. I
Now
help
let's
companies.
go ahead. You had company.
I help a company if they do acquire a business, I help them integrate it. Most companies don't do that. They just acquire a business and think everything's going to be fine, and they don't, and it's not necessarily. You got to set it up for success right away as soon as you get it.
Hmm.
And then
I'm
after
glad
you
you said
do,
that.
but if you do, it's almost foolproof. If you buy an already successful business and you integrate it properly, it's one of the wisest business decisions you can do when you're in the lower middle market space. I mean, it's what Wall Street's been doing for 30, 40 years. That's
Mm.
the way they've grown is through acquisitions. So, but it's a tactic that the lower middle market and small business sector can do just as well if they, with a few tweaks to the overall parameters.
Let's talk about that, right? There's a lot of people that buy businesses, right? We have buyers that listen in, we have entrepreneurs, business owners that listen in. A lot of people don't talk about what happened after you buy the business. So tell us more, what's this process when it comes to that integration, like you mentioned earlier?
Well, it starts actually before the deal's closed. In the
Okay.
due diligence phase, the due diligence consists of legal and financial due diligence. Everybody focuses
Mhm.
on that, but there's a commercial due diligence
Hmm.
questionnaire and set of things you look into. And if you do commercial due diligence right, it sets you up for integration and it also sets you up for post-closing growth. So
Hmm.
in commercial due diligence, like one of the things you're determining in commercial due diligence is who are the key employees and suppliers and customers of this business.
Yeah.
And with regards to the employees, who's going to run the business for you if you're going to be an owner
Mhm.
and investor? If you're going to be an owner operator, it's still important too. But one of the key goals of any proper integration is determining the business's life after the founder owner leaves. If you do
Mm.
that correctly and you go and if you come at it recognizing that the value of any business is its staff and its employees and its
Yeah.
systems, processes that are, individualized in all the employees. Part of the integration is getting to know that, making sure everybody knows that you recognize that that's the value and that you're going to preserve that and build on it. And then also just determining, like, for instance, in my case, I'm an operator of any of the businesses that my business partnerships and private equity fund acquires. So a
Okay.
key factor is determining who's going to be the general manager that runs the day to day. It could be an internal promotion of somebody that the owner relies on that knows the business inside and out.
Mhm.
It could be an external hire of someone that a staffing agency or someone in your network helps get to run the day to day, or it could possibly be the owner. The owner, in some certain circumstances, is an appropriate if there's an ability and willingness to continue operating the business under another organizational framework, then that could be
Yeah.
a possibility. But we generally like to promote from within.
I love it. I love it. Now, I want to go back. You and I had a conversation, I guess a couple weeks ago about when it comes to raising capital and building a team around you. Tell us more about it. I think that's so valuable. A lot of people don't think about it. They're just like, I need an investor, but don't really think about how do I raise capital properly? How do I have the right structure and team around me to make sure that I'm able to raise the amount of capital that I want if I haven't done certain things yet. So tell us more about that. I think you call it a board of advisor.
Sure, I'd actually take it a step before that, which is
Yeah.
I would encourage every owner of a business that operates that business to take a self-assessment and really determine there's three types of people that get involved and start businesses. They're
Mm-hmm.
either they have an artistic bent, or they're an entrepreneurial, or they're manager. That's where
Mm.
they get their pleasure. That's where their natural kind of aptitude is at. And when they try to be something they're not, it tends to be hard. That's most
Yeah.
people that are burned out in their business. It's because they're an artist who likes to create, who likes to take ideas that they come up with that are visionary and genius and then see them become reality. But they're not
Yeah.
necessarily the entrepreneur that's good at building investor and strategic advisor teams. They're not necessarily the manager who loves being in the day-to-day grittiness of setting schedules and monitor employees,
Mm.
dealing with customers. So the first step I would dare say is have an honest assessment of what you are, and then just find the other people that are the other things you are not. Get that
Gotcha.
get that good collective operative team of artists to provide the ideas, manager to implement them in day-to-day operations, an entrepreneur who has the long-term strategic vision with investors and above the business thinking that can do acquisitions and any number of other things to get you to
Mm.
the next level. You need that team. And once you have that, then it's a good idea. Then you can start looking, then investors will probably take a chance on you because there's
Gotcha.
there's angel investors, there's people that are just made a good amount of money and they just out of a degree of altruism for the world. They want to help out people that were in the position they were. So they
Yeah.
bring not only money, but they bring industry expertise in the particular type of business you have. And there's angel investors in every single type. You could also do a private equity fund where you form the general partnership, and that team we talked about is also your partners in the general partnership that has a mid office and a back office that helps raise money and do legal compliance. And then you go out
Huh.
and you raise investor funds. There's a lot of investors out there that are looking for a quality deal. They're sitting on dry powder. There's trillions of dollars in dry powder, money that they would like to invest. They just don't
Yeah.
have a deal in place. Um, and the world needs you. I mean, there's a lot of business owners that 9 out of 10 businesses will never sell and they're just going to close. You know,
Mm.
there's a lot of business owners that really would rather have moved on. They're old, tired, sick, dying, bored, or just want
Yeah.
to go to something else. And they could use a quality acquirer who's going to not only preserve their legacy, give them a fair consideration for the business they've built, but also take care of their employees and their customers, and then take the business to the next level. That's what I take pride on with my business partnerships and my private equity fund. Is that's what we do. We have the operational and strategic expertise to
Okay.
to recognize what the value is in the business, build on it so that the legacy that the owner uh, created can
Yeah.
preserve for another 30 or 40 years, and they can go on with fair consideration for their business and while still going on to enjoy retirement or go on to their next endeavor.
Huh. You mentioned a couple of things here. I wanna dive to it, right? Yeah, I mean, you have your own private equity fund. I think it's a mysterious world for a lot of people, right? Because you hear the word PE, but nobody really know what's going on behind closed door. So you mentioned back office, and front. So break that down. What do you mean by back office and front office?
Well, there's three offices in a
Okay.
private equity fund, the general partnership of a private equity fund.
Yeah.
There is a front office that conducts the operations that gets the returns. Yeah,
Gotcha.
I'm speaking super general here, but then the
Yep.
mid office is generally where the fund manager is, and that's the person who directly interacts with investors, gets investors to become limited partners who invest
Mhm.
in limited partnership from which the front office uses those funds for operations.
Gotcha.
The fund manager is like the face of the fund, the leader of the fund who, keeps in investor relations at a high level. And then
Okay.
there's the back office, which is think of that as the accountants and lawyers. There's a lot of regulations about
Mm.
taking somebody else's money, putting it to work in either the
Mm-hmm.
private capital markets or the public markets, and then getting them returns in terms of reporting, in terms of disclosures, in terms of, and the back office is the one that makes sure we're completely in compliance with all the regulations that were put in place for a good reason. They want to
Yeah.
make sure, the SEC wants to make sure that investors are fully apprised of the
Yeah.
risks of what they're doing and what could go well, what could go bad. And if they do, when
Yeah.
they're out, that's what the back office is designed to do, is make sure we're meeting all that.
I love it. I love the simplicity that you break it down for us. That is super valuable. Which take
Oh,
me to my next questions, right? Because now this is total assumption. I'm assuming there's different tiers in PE firms, right? Like what are some of the tier in PE firms? Is there like tier one, they're only dealing with this type of businesses, tier two, this type, and then you have like a KKR, which is like massive. Like, is there different tiers on how PE firms go about acquiring businesses?
oh, there's all sorts of approaches to it. Yes, there's a number of different philosophies, a number of different, besides just size of the assets under management, there's a
Yeah.
number of different philosophies for not only the industry, the type of businesses they acquire, but what they plan on doing with them
Yeah.
afterward.
Talk
Uh,
about that a little bit.
well, sure, a number of lately for the last 20 years, since the late 90s, the platform add-on strategy has gotten, because most private equity firms up till then really only acquired businesses that were relatively large. I mean,
Mm,
$150 million in annual revenue or above, just
yeah.
because they have the management in place to continue operations. Because the private equity funds generally don't get involved in the day-to-day or the strategic,
Yeah.
but take investor money, acquire a business, hope that it continues to grow to the
Yeah.
same degree that it was before they acquired it. Then there's other more active, operationally active funds like me. I don't just, we don't just acquire the business and at closing tell them see you at the Christmas party and hope everything goes well in the meantime. We actually do the integration to determine what they do well, what they
Mm-hmm.
don't, what they do well that could be improved, what they don't do well that needs to change, what they don't do at all that would really help, and what kind of innovation of and innovative practices they do. And then we have a 12-quarter, 3-year strategic
Mm.
growth plan that cuts, increases revenue while maintaining expenses. So that's the second approach to it. But no, you're correct. I mean, a number of them are, some of them are in the stratosphere. I mean, I think
Yeah.
BlackRock's at $1 trillion, I think. So
Yeah. Yeah.
in terms of
That's
AUM,
That's amazing. Now, I want to go a little bit deeper. You mentioned in terms of AUM, right? What's what's the typical AUM for a PE firm? And people that don't know what AUM is, we're talking about asset under management. What's that typical benchmark number that any, I guess, startup PE firm want to get to? So they'd be like, okay, we're getting somewhere now. Like, what's that average that you've seen?
well, generally there's no real average. It depends on your acquisition goals. Now, under
Okay.
50 million in assets under management, just how much money you've raised from investors is that's a term.
Gotcha.
If it's under 50 million or under, it's considered a micro private
Okay.
equity. Sounds
Got
it's
it.
having
I
$50 million in,
know.
you're just the little guy. But no, if you're only buying businesses who's, that at closing you're paying 500 to $1 million each, that's 40 or 50 quality acquisitions right there. So,
Yeah.
but if your main target is in the middle market or the
Yeah.
upper market, middle market is considered from 100 million to, I think it's 750 million in
Okay.
annual revenue. Businesses that have that much in annual revenue, that's a middle market private equity fund. And generally they're doing the platform add-on strategy where they use up to half of the money they raised for
Mm-hmm.
acquisition for a platform company that has the entire suite of corporate executives. So
Mm.
CEO, COO, CMO, CTO, all the different C executives, so that that business is ready to go. And then they use the other half of investor funds to buy probably 10 businesses, um,
Mm.
that are added on to the
That
platform.
main. Gotcha. Oh wow.
The private equity fund gets 200, pays 200 million. If they have 500 million, they spend 250 million on one company that has the full array of staff and executives. And then they spend 20, 10, $25 million deals. And then they add those companies to the platform company for the executives and the staff to integrate into the larger company and operate. So that's a lot of times the play with the platform add-on. And
Wow.
what that allows the private equity fund to do is just focus on raising money and then reporting to investors, while
Yeah.
the platform company's executives just do the operational duties on a daily basis.
That is massive. I never thought about it that way. So it's like they're literally taking the capital by a company that's already set up running everything and just adding bolts on so that they show the additional growth that's happening. And now, how do PE normally get paid, right? Do they get like a percentage of asset under management? Like, how does that part work?
Well, the most famous is 2 and 20. There's
Okay.
the general partnership, because in a private equity fund, there's a general partners and then there's the
Yeah.
limited partners. Limited partners are the people that just invest in the fund.
Yeah. Yeah.
To the limited partnership. The general partners are the people that actually operate the fund. They take the funds, they deploy it, and then they report the returns and they distribute the returns. So
Gotcha.
2 and 20 means normally there's a 2% management fee. So let's say they raised $100 million. That fund would get
10
um,
million.
2 million per
Yeah.
year for that $100 million that they raised. That would go towards to be distributed among the general partnerships to cover expenses and their salaries and the rest. Now, the
Gotcha.
20% refers to out of the returns. So let's say that with that $100 million deployed, there was $10 million in profit in any given
Mm-hmm.
year. The limited partners would have 8 million of that divided amongst themselves on a pro rata percentage basis based on how much they contributed. And
Yeah.
then the general partnership would get 2 million of that to distribute amongst themselves as per their percentage ownership of the general partnership. So That
Gotcha.
and sometimes it depends. I mean, if God, especially if you're just starting out, it's definitely going
Yeah.
to be 2 and 20. But if you get known as somebody that's really good at what's called creating alpha, somebody that can really get great returns, can turn $1 into 10 pretty
Yeah.
consistently, you can do even better. Sometimes the split's 30-70, or if you get to a certain level, if you get a 50% return or more, then it's half and half. So the limited partners, if they get, but remember, you got to think of it as most people, if they just put their money into like the best mutual fund would just get them 8% a year. So
Yeah, it's massive.
it's massive, is right. But that's the negotiations. That's what the compliance, the back office. That's why before we even raise the money, there are private placement memorandums and limited partnership agreements that have to
Yeah.
expressly state everything I just told you about. We have to
Wow.
expressly state, if you invest with us, if we get returns, this is how they're going to be distributed. Same thing with all the risks, all the ways it could go south. And if we do that and they still invest in it, that is our rule book. That's exactly how
Yeah.
we govern, and that governs our relationships with investors. So,
Wow, this was so mind-blowing, Joe. Thank you for sharing this with us.
oh,
Now,
any, I
I
love
want to go
talking.
a step further, right? Because you work with a lot of business owners. You've helped a lot of them exit. You've acquired some of them. What are some of the challenges that you've seen guys like yourself that's running PE firms are facing?
Well, that's kind of a couple questions. The challenges of most business owners is the terrible irony that the things they do that make them survive is what makes them not sellable.
Ooh,
Most of the time, 96% of businesses never make it to 10 years.
yeah,
And 4% of businesses make it to 10 years. But out of the 4% that make it, they made it because of things the owner did and took upon themselves that make their business unsellable because the business is entirely reliant on them.
on the owners.
So it's, as an exit consultant, if I was
Yeah,
ever just to help somebody try to get their business ready for sale, that's a key factor, is getting the business to be able to be independent of the owner's efforts. You know,
mm-hmm.
the more your business depends on you, the less your business is worth. So that fundamental reality of
Mm,
is one of the key challenges. Now, again, it's if you got a platform strategy whereby if you have a company that has a full set of management already trained and in place,
mm-hmm.
buying a business that's relatively dependent on the owner isn't necessarily an obstacle because you're just adding it on to the
Yeah,
business that management. But in most cases, under 20, that's why in most cases, businesses that have $20 million or less in revenue are very unlikely to sell to anybody but somebody else who's just like the owner. So
yeah.
if it's a plumbing company, generally they're only going to be able to be sold to somebody who's also a plumber and just wants to have a plumbing business instead of starting one. So
Huh.
that's where we're kind of different. We're willing to wade into acquisitions of that size, whereas most private equity funds wouldn't.
Okay. Wow. Now, people that's listening to this be like, okay, how do I get in touch with you? How do I find out if I want to work with you or not? Like, what are some of your criteria to figure out, okay, this is a company I want to work with?
Boy, well, because there's two ways that
Yeah,
generally I'll look at that. Is one, if I get somebody sitting across me, I'll ask a series of questions and we'll have an assessment of what's called a certified value builder. They have an assessment that tells a
yeah,
business owner after a 15-minute multiple choice questionnaire just if their business is sellable, and if so, how much as per a discounted cash flow valuation formula, and what they need to do to improve it. If I got somebody sitting across from me, my first instinct would be just to see what they want to do. If they wanted to just improve their business so they can continue owning it to sell it, then I
yeah.
would consider working with them as a consultant. If they didn't, if they're just exhausted or just that bored and just don't want to put in, it can take 2 years, 2 to 3 years to get a business depending on
Sellable.
sellable.
Yeah,
Uh, and if they don't, then we'd have a conversation about whether it makes sense to, come to a fair price and under fair payment terms and structure that give them the ability to have a graceful exit and then make sure their business is handed off to somebody that knows what they're doing with it. So I'd either want to buy it, or if they want to be a consultant, I think I would just, because again, if I don't own the business or have
Yeah.
operational control, I got to make sure they're going to listen. They're actually going to do what the
Yeah,
advice,
what you're suggesting. That's true.
because it's like 21. That's why generally when we get way back to an earlier topic, when we talked about who's going to run the business as my partnerships
Huh?
acquire, the owner is generally not the automatic option, just because a lot of founders are entrepreneurs and a lot of entrepreneurs
Mhm.
chafe at having a boss. That's why they became a business owner. They don't
Yeah.
so, but it works that way with the consulting end too. You got to be kind of humble and just listen to, I'd have to really make sure, because if I did a consulting deal, I would get equity, I'd get ownership of the business of some
Mm,
amount and fees. But the equity is so they know that I'm going to do my job. The
yeah.
monthly fees are so I know they'll do their job.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
there
It's a
truly is
way
a partnership.
balance.
They wanted to do it because it is a 21. I've developed a 21 step process that combines two exit grooming systems that I studied and the one I'm certified in under John Werlow, the certified value builder designation. I've kind of crammed them together into that 12 quarter post closing growth plan. And it's like 21 different steps, you got to do. Some of it kind of is things you would imagine, but other
Yeah.
things not related to revenue increase or bottom line profit increase. A lot of it's related to things that seem counterintuitive. So, but
Okay. We're gonna have to have you come back and talk about this 21 steps, man.
sure, no doubt. Uh, because some of it's philosophical. A lot of people, with their businesses, like with taxes, the
Yeah.
ideal thing is to get the IRS to believe you don't make as much profit as you do,
Which could bite you in the back.
but when the sale price of your business is based off the profit that you have, you're
Hmm.
giving up 10 times more from on the exit than you would save from making it seem like you don't make as much money as you do. So
Mm.
but no, so that I integrate all that, whether it's the individual conversation with somebody or in my aviation business partnership or the home service business partnership or the trucking business partnership, I'm
Yeah.
willing to partner with just about anybody who's an operational expert because I know the strategic end of things, using acquisitions for business entrances and growth, and then also integrating those businesses so they're set up for success and then growing them as per a 12 quarter, 3-year growth plan. That's a combination of Roland Fraser's formulas, a group called the
Mhm.
Scalable Organization, and Jay Abraham. I love Jay Abraham. So I've kind of mashed all three of those together and then exit grooming it as per those three exit grooming
Wow.
systems that I've kind of got down pat.
That's amazing, man. So how do people get in touch with you? If they wanna, connect with you about what's going on, what's the best way for them to do that?
Probably the best way would be LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Joel McGuire. Background is the exact same as it is here on my picture, but my phone number, you can feel free to call or text me. My phone number is 513-276-9552.
Mhm.
Probably the best email would be joelm@armyrangeracquisitions.com.
Awesome.
McGuire with a G. Or you can, again, direct message me through LinkedIn. So
I love it. Guys, check out Joe. He's the man, as you can see, full of knowledge. Thank you for coming in, brother. Appreciate you.
thank you, Gilbert. I see.